An infant was discovered and brought to an orphanage where staff members made a horrifying discovery about him as they undressed him for a bath. The sight of the baby shocked everyone present. As dusk settled over the city, shadows grew long and menacing in the dimly lit backstreets. A weary yet resolute woman hurried through these shadows, the muffled cries of a newborn cradled in her arms. Her heart pounded, mirroring her panic and dread with each hurried step. "I need help, please," she pleaded to various pedestrians who ignored her anxious appearance. No one wanted to disrupt their evening for a stranger, especially one clearly fleeing from something. Checking behind her, she noticed her chasers, men in sharp suits with stern faces. "They're almost here," she murmured to herself, fear mixed with resolve in her gaze. Temporarily taking cover behind some trash bins, she tried to soothe her crying child. "Shoot, my love, please be quiet," she whispered urgently. The baby's cries turned to whimpers, seemingly sensing the peril they were in. However, their brief respite ended when the men located them, their expressions as unfeeling as the chilling night air. "Hand over the baby," demanded one, his tone chillingly indifferent. The mother's resolve ignited defiantly in the face of danger. "Only over my dead body," she declared, holding her son protectively as if he were a living shield against the looming threat. "I will defend my son with my life." Losing patience, one of the men stepped forward and struck her forcefully in the face. As darkness took her, her final thought was a silent plea for her son's safety in a world that had shown them nothing but harshness. Following a devastating incident, everything descended into darkness. Mrs. Edith, an elderly woman known for her kind demeanor and community involvement, was making her way back from church. Her slowly paced steps were quickened when a faint, desperate cry of a baby pierced the night's calm. Drawn to the sound, she ventured into a dim alleyway where she stumbled upon a chilling sight. A young woman lying still, her expression peaceful as if she had found tranquility in eternal rest. Beside her a tiny infant. The young mother, it seemed, had been fleeing from men in suits, with a gentle touch born from an understanding of life's delicacy. Mrs. Edith cradled the baby, soothing him with comforting whispers. "Calm down, sweetie. You're safe now." After alerting the police who arrived to handle the young woman's remains and to investigate her demise, Mrs. Edith was faced with a decision, opting not to disclose her discovery of the baby alongside the woman. She feared he might end up in a substandard orphanage. Instead, she chose to bring him to her own home. There, she nurtured the infant with grandmotherly affection, feeding him and tucking him in, ensuring he slept peacefully. The following morning, burdened by the unexpected responsibility but driven by a sense of duty, Mrs. Edith brought the baby to a reputable orphanage. It was a place she trusted, having been raised there herself. She hoped that it would provide the baby with the care and protection he needed. When Mrs. Edith and the infant arrived at the orphanage, the staff greeted them with both astonishment and appreciation. "He will need a name," they remarked, to which Mrs. Edith promptly responded by naming him Matthew. While witnessing the formalities of his registration, a wave of joy washed over her, comforted by the knowledge that Matthew would be in safe hands, though her heart ached at the thought of leaving him. Noticing Mrs. Edith's distress, the staff kindly suggested she might like to stay a bit longer to assist with Matthew's first bath. Delighted, she accepted, as she had never had children of her own. The opportunity to care for Matthew, even briefly, filled an emptiness she hadn't realized she had. With hands trembling with affection, she began to undress him, imagining what it might have been like to care for her own child. However, the unexpected soon unfolded. As she removed Matthew's garments, a stunned silence fell over the room. "Oh my God, what is this?" they barely managed to utter as everyone, including Mrs. Edith, stepped back in shock. There, on the baby's skin, were bizarre symbols marked in black ink with inexplicable precision. The enigmatic designs on Matthew's body were something neither the staff nor Mrs. Edith could have foreseen. The baby's first bath at the orphanage turned into a memorable incident for everyone present. "Oh my God, who would do this to such a small child?" they wondered aloud, their curiosity piqued despite their shock. The markings weren't ordinary. They appeared to be ancient symbols with a specific purpose. Yet it was unnerving to see them on the delicate skin of a newborn. They were a puzzle, a baffling secret etched onto the skin of an innocent. The old woman, now ghostly pale, couldn't tear her eyes away. how did I overlook this?" she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "Last night, I simply put him to bed. I never thought to bathe him or remove his clothes." "Oh dear Lord," whispered theories began to swirl throughout the room, as everyone attempted to grasp the unexplainable. Could it be that his mother was involved in something untoward? One person speculated, seeking affirmation from the group, yet the elderly lady stood up for her. "That poor young lady didn't appear to be mixed up in such affairs," she countered, recalling the image of the boy's deceased mother clutching him in a final protective embrace. There was something more at play here, something utterly beyond our understanding. The mystery of the marking spread rapidly across the orphanage, igniting the curiosity of all who worked there. One by one, they approached to observe the infant marked with mysterious symbols, each one attempting to interpret the unexplainable. At that moment, the entire orphanage was consumed with a mix of intrigue and apprehension towards the unknown, a sentiment that unified everyone in their quest for answers. Meanwhile, the baby, unaware of the commotion surrounding him, lay quietly undressed, waiting for his bath. Embodying a riddle that defied explanation, despite all the conjecture about the enigmatic signs on Matthew's skin, one individual among the staff particularly stood out: Gabriel, a young security guard with a deep fascination for ancient cultures and mysterious symbols, visited the nursery to observe a newborn. As he gazed at the peacefully sleeping infant, a particular mark grabbed his attention. "This one," he muttered, pointing to a complex spiral merged with an eye-like figure, his voice shaking with recognition. "I've seen this before. Oh my God, what is it? What does it mean?" he exclaimed, prompting questions from everyone around, including an elderly woman who had been quietly standing by. Driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, Gabriel quickly photographed the symbols and began scouring through obscure websites and forgotten mythologies to find any clue that might explain the strange markings. The findings were not only startling but also brought a sense of urgency and fear. "I'm afraid you won't like what I've found," he said gravely. "These markings are associated with an ancient cult that practiced human sacrifice to gain power and salvation." Gabriel continued, his voice filled with dread. "This cult worshipped a deity they believed could bring renewal and destruction, according to their twisted beliefs. This malevolent god would reward them if they provided a human vessel, a baby born with these sacred symbols. The most horrifying part is the ritual they performed. Historical texts suggest that the cult would select a young woman to birth the symbol bearer. After the child's birth, they would conduct a final, gruesome ritual, ensuring their dark dominion over the world and sealing the fate of humanity." The researcher paused, allowing the full weight of the circumstances to be understood. "Gabriel's research has revealed the terrifying secrets of an ancient cult. We must remain alert to prevent their distorted doctrines from emerging once again and endangering us all." As the elderly woman pieced together the events, she realized the young mother was desperately seeking refuge on that fateful night, attempting to shield her son from an ominous destiny. Indeed, that was precisely what occurred. The resolve in her expression, fear intertwined with bravery, clarified everything. She was aware of the risks the cult posed to her and her infant, and her final deed was an act of immense love aimed at safeguarding Matthew from the dreadful curse. This revelation presented the security guard, the elderly woman, and all the staff at the orphanage with a significant duty. It was no longer merely about caring for an orphan child. It was about protecting a life unwittingly at the heart of a battle between good and evil. But why hadn't the men in suits taken the child after they had slain his mother? It appeared that just after they attacked the girl, a police car drove by, causing them to flee. They left the mother and child in the alley, but when they returned to retrieve the baby, Mrs. Edith had already saved him. They were incensed, unaware of the child's whereabouts, as if the situation couldn't escalate further. The tension at the orphanage spiked dramatically with the sudden appearance of two smartly dressed men. They introduced themselves vaguely, claiming they were searching for a baby whose mother was desperately trying to find him, a blonde newborn, with the mother hospitalized and separated from her baby. "Have you received any children here in the past day or so?" they asked. Their account might have seemed credible to someone uninformed, but not to Mrs. Edith, who eyed them suspiciously. A chill of mistrust ran through her as she responded, "I'm sorry, we haven't had any new infants matching that description." She fibbed with a conviction that even astonished her. The men glanced at each other, their expressions filled with suspicion and frustration. They had spent the entire previous night and morning visiting every orphanage in the city, looking for a specific little boy. They persisted. "Are you certain, ma'am? May we please verify?" Despite their pleas, they were halted by Gabriel, the security guard, who had been observing from a distance. He stepped forward and warned, "Please, gentlemen, I must ask you to step back. You might scare the children. The lady has informed us that no new children have arrived, so you must leave." In that instant, Gabriel spotted a chilling detail, a symbol on one of the men's wrists, partially concealed by his watch and sleeve, identical to the one on Matthew's skin, a mark of their secret society. The men, visibly upset, departed quickly. Gabriel relayed his discovery to Mrs. Edith and the orphanage management, and they collectively decided to contact the police. The narrative unfolded like a suspense thriller, a child marked with enigmatic symbols, a shadowy ancient cult, and mysterious chasers. Yet, the gravity of the situation was unmistakable, initially met with skepticism. The police began an investigation as a precaution. What started as a straightforward inquiry soon escalated into a full-scale operation. Detectives exposed a complex network of deception and manipulation tied to the cult, which had infiltrated prominent corporations, academic institutions, and even law enforcement. They had deceived numerous single mothers with promises of a brighter future for their offspring, only to abduct the children for their nefarious ceremonies. The crackdown concluded with numerous arrests. The cult's founders and key members were apprehended in a coordinated police sting spanning multiple states. The media extensively covered the dismantling of the cult, highlighting how the authorities had systematically tracked down and apprehended those responsible for the network of fear and manipulation. The orphanage, once a haven for homeless children, had turned into the center of an unimaginable drama. Amidst the turmoil, however, there was a ray of hope. Unaware of the pivotal role he played in the struggle between forces of light and darkness, little Matthew slept soundly in his crib, now safer than ever. The resolve of individuals like the security guard, the elderly lady, and the vigilant authorities had removed the looming danger. With the threat from the cult neutralized, the orphanage could finally relax. The apprehension of the cult members marked not only the conclusion of a grim chapter but also stood as a testament to the achievements possible through collective effort. Following the upheaval caused by the cult's exposure and dissolution, tranquility returned to the city. Mrs. Edith, whose heart had been touched the moment she first saw Matthew, made a life-altering decision. Driven by her deep affection and a protective instinct, she chose to adopt him. Adoption was merely the beginning of their new journey together. Knowing the potential risks still present, Mrs. Edith resolved that the best course of action to secure Matthew's future was to leave behind any associations with his troubled past. With firm resolve, she sold her home, bid farewell to her community, and relocated with Matthew to a quaint town far away. Their new home in the small town was precisely what Mrs. Edith had envisioned: peaceful, friendly, and above all, secure. Together, she and Matthew started afresh, creating a new life in a cozy, laughter-filled house that quickly became a home filled with love. Raised in the nurturing embrace of Mrs. Edith, far removed from his perilous beginnings, the little boy flourished into a joyful, inquisitive, and compassionate individual, embodying the love and safety Mrs. Edith enveloped him in. The drawings that once adorned his skin faded with each bath, as they were merely illustrations in washable paint. Mrs. Edith never divulged the circumstances surrounding the boy's adoption, even as he matured. She believed that some realities were too burdensome to bear, and chose instead to preserve the purity of his youth. She filled his days with tales of adventure, love, and magic, fostering dreams rather than fears. For Matthew, Mrs. Edith was his true mother, teaching him to cycle, mending his scraped knees, and banishing the nocturnal monsters with her presence. Their bond, chosen and strong as any biological connection, was a testament to their deep love. As time moved on, Matthew and Mrs. Edith enjoyed a peaceful life, defined not by past fears but by future hopes. They had created their own family, bound by love and shared dreams. Mrs. Edith reveled in the safety and happiness they had secured, fulfilling her maternal dreams. Their happiness was profound, lasting until Mrs. Edith passed at the age of 89, leaving Matthew, now 29, to navigate the world on his own, yet, he was confident that their bond, enduring beyond physical presence, would continue to fortify him. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comment section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.